Hello and welcome to Born Witchy, where we explore intuition through a modern lens on tarot. My name is Betina Bethlem and I am your host and your guide. And I'm excited to talk to you today about the terminology Born Witchy and what that means and the philosophy behind it and why I think you should care. So the idea for Born Witchy came to me about 6 years ago when I was going through a lot. I talked about it in another one of my videos where I was sharing how the tarot found me to begin with. But I was about to embark on this very kind of like eat, pray, love journey of living abroad, of being in Europe, of being in Indonesia, of teaching yoga in another country, all of these things. And I was really excited about everything I was learning through my tarot study and my breathwork explorations and just sort of this whole spiritual awakening that I was experiencing during my Saturn return. And I wanted to start some kind of blog. I wanted to have a place to share some of these ideas. At the time, I was like way too shy for YouTube or TikTok or any of these things, which is so silly now looking back on it. But anyhow, I really wanted some sort of platform to share the things that I was learning. And the idea for Born Witchy literally landed in my brain one day when I was swimming laps in Stowe, Vermont, which is so cool because now that I have developed Born Witchy and I've channeled what it's about and I know what I'm doing with it, that is so perfect because the entire premise of what I want to teach with Born Witchy and with my approach to tarot is that we have a full system intelligence that goes beyond just our mind and includes other ways of knowing. And the fact that it just came to me as an intuitive knowing while I was swimming is really sort of emblematic of what happens when you start to interact with the tarot and start to develop your own intuition. I have the Queen of Cups here to help me out in explaining what I mean by this. So Queen of Cups, she's the Queen of Hearts. She's the Queen of Water element. She's the queen of our emotional world and what I like to call and what yogis like to call the emotional body. It's this idea that we have a way of knowing that comes through our feelings, that feelings are important, that they convey information in a way that isn't intellectual or mental, but rather that is felt. You might have found that even with yourself, sometimes you're taking a long shower or you're in the bath or swimming laps like I was, like sometimes the water really does conduct energy in some way where you have these like aha moment insights when you're in that kind of flow. So that's how the idea for Born Witchy came in. I knew that I wanted to start something to share my ideas, and I was in this practice of swimming where I would really get into sort of this no-mind state. And it was as if the words Born Witchy were just sort of like implanted onto my mind, and I saw it. I saw the logo, I saw the words, and I was just like, okay, Born Witchy, go home and buy the URL for Born Witchy. And I did, and I created a WordPress, and I just started writing about these things that I was learning. And I bring this Queen of Cups here because she's kind of similar to, I kind of think of her as like the little sister to the High Priestess in some way. She is the most intuitive and sort of sensitive and tapped in of the queens in terms of like tapping into having sensitivity to be able to tap into what is beyond the veil in a similar way that the High Priestess does. So the queen brings a sort of maturity to her element and a nurturing to her element. So it's this idea that if we can like nurture our waters, like nurture our emotions, understand the signals that they're sending us, the yeses and nos that live within these feelings that we have in our body and our hearts, in our nervous system, that we can take them and understand them as information for us. So I love that. Anyhow, coming back to Born Witchy. So I didn't totally know what this name meant when it first came to me. I just knew that it resonated with me a lot and that it meant something to me. And over the years, as I've really developed my tarot practice and developed my clientele and started to build this company, I'm realizing that I feel like Born Witchy really is the story of us. I sometimes say that witch is a synonym for women, and I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but I also kind of mean it in the sense that things like intuition and sensitivity and mysticism and knowing are things that were cast into the shadow by patriarchy, by the powers that be. You know, they burned the witches for having these powers. But really, I think what it was a denial and a punishment of the feminine. So, in some ways, yeah, witch is a synonym for woman. It's a synonym for all things feminine. And part of what Born Witchy is about reinstating the feminine principle, centering it again, elevating it out of the shadows and saying, no, it's not degrading. Feminine things are not girly or weak or degrading. They're actually very powerful. They may work differently than the masculine energies that are like so celebrated by our society and our culture and the patriarchy that we live in and are hopefully in the process of dismantling and reassembling and taking apart into something better and more harmonious and new. But yeah, like this idea of Born Witchy is completely about reinstating the feminine and showing that there is power and empowerment within these gifts that I believe we are all born with. So that's where the born comes in as well. Born Witchy is about remembering the gifts that we were born with and that we were taught to put away. Intuition, we've all got it. Whether we're a girl or a boy or whatever we are, we have intuition. My dog Stevie has intuition. We have this knowing that cannot be explained sometimes by logic, and that just is. We are swimming in energy, and energy is full of information, and we have the ability to read that energy, but we've been really trained to mistrust it. So part of what this Born Witchy is about and what this tarot practice is about remembering that you know. Remembering that you know. If I can help you to remember that you know in a reading that I give you, then that is amazing. But what I'm even more interested in is teaching you how to play with these cards and how to read them, because this is the practice ground. This is the proving ground. Each of these cards contains a moment, a scenario, a character, a phase of life, a season of life that you will go through. And if you study this and understand it, when that part of your story appears, manifests in your physical life, you're more prepared for it. You understand it. You know how to work with it. You understand what the energy is. You understand what the light and shadow of it is, potentially. So I encourage people to study tarot, and I have put that centrally into Born Witchy because I think that the tarot is a really accessible and fun and portable game, playful way for us to begin that remembering and to work on that remembering that we are born witchy, that we are all born a little witchy. Witchy, the word witchy, that's a thing as well. A lot of people really sort of get triggered or provoked by this word, and I'm kind of reclaiming it on purpose. You know, there's so many bad associations with witch. Sometimes I tell people, oh, I'm a witch, and they're like, oh my God, are you a light witch? Are you a dark witch? Okay, fine. I know that those things are things, but I do think, like I said, witch is a synonym for the word woman, which is a synonym for the feminine. This is something that needs to be brought out of the shadow. The fear needs to be stripped away from these things that have been just kind of demonized, you know? Which is, again, like I said, it's about understanding and reading energy. Of course, yes, dark witch, I think when people ask me that, they're like, oh, are you manipulating energy to do evil? Like, no, that's not what we're doing with Born Witchy. There's a reason it's got a cute little Y at the end and it's all in lowercase. I'm really trying to like reclaim and neutralize it and say, hey, not everything about this is so scary, and we really shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because this understanding of energy, this ability to interact with the universe and to co-create is really magical. You know, so much of what gets deemed as witchcraft and that witches were burned for back in the day was actually really amazing things. Like, I think about something like herbalism. The thought that a doctor, a woman, a witch doctor, a person that understood the power of herbs would then be killed for knowing that is absurd to me. Sometimes a witch is just a healer, you know? So Born Witchy is this idea that, like, yeah, it's not, you don't have to necessarily identify with the word witch, But what I do want to foster with what I'm doing and with what I'm teaching through the tarot is that we have a little witchy within all of us, and that is something to be celebrated and to be brought out into the light and to not be closeted about anymore. Gosh, I remember when I was into all of these things, and I always was into all of these things. I was literally buying tarot decks at Barnes and Noble when I was like in the 5th grade, and doing Ouija boards and devouring Linda Goodman's books about astrology when I was young. Like, this has always been something that I've been attracted to. But I ended up going to an Ivy League school and was surrounded by all this intellect. And there came a point where I kind of felt a little bit like I had to closet my witchiness and hide it because it wasn't going to be taken seriously, that people were going to think that I was crazy, all of that kind of thing. And so I put it away. I shamed myself out of it. I allowed the sort of status quo and trend of the society to tell me that these things that I was into were somehow stupid or wrong. And I really think that that is a shaming that has been going on for centuries at this point to keep women small, to keep women separated from their power. Let's separate it from women to keep people small and separated from their power, because men, anyone has access to intuition and to this sort of power that has been just sort of labeled as girly, feminine, woman, whatever. So Born Witchy really is about reclaiming that, having fun with it. I do always like to remind people, don't be scared of the tarot. It's a game. Are you scared of a game of cards? It's playful. The tarot does not have any sovereignty over you. It is something that you can work with to understand the energies that are at play, and then figure out how you want to co-create with them, how you want to interact with them. We are in this constant weaving with the tapestry of life. It's not that life is fated and happening to us. We are weaving together, with what our soul planned, with what the universe has in store for us, and the tarot can really help us walk that path in a way that feels aligned and empowered and beautiful and imbued with our values and our intentions. So we're all born a little witchy, and tarot is a means for us to connect with that. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I see this as a spiritual text that we read in a non-linear way. It's an unbound book of wisdom, a book with no binding. When we cast the cards, they come out in all different orders, and we read them sort of spherically using our entire system of intelligence that I keep referring to understand what it is that the book wants to say to us on that day. When we practice with this set of cards, when we play the game of tarot, our intuition becomes stronger and stronger. You can think of it as a form of spiritual fitness. The more you play the tarot, the more intuitive you become. There even comes a point, how like you go to yoga classes and the teacher will sometimes say, the real work happens off the mat. Like, you're doing your work here on the mat, showing up for your practice, but the real work is going to be when you're at home with your spouse, with your kids, with your job, with your boss. And like the way that the practice trickles into those everyday moments is the real yoga. Same thing with tarot. Seriously, the real tarot is what happens in everyday life. And the more you play this game, you'll start to realize that everything is a tarot. For me, as someone who loves art and art history, I love the experience of walking through a museum like the Met or the MoMA, and it literally feels like I'm walking through a 3-dimensional deck of tarot cards. But honestly, like, walking through life is the same thing. You come across these different scenarios as you go, and all of them are represented in this group of 78 archetypes, or 78 little vignettes and stories. Here, I just pulled one as an example. 3 of Cups. This is the card of sisterhood and inner circle friendship and besties and just lighthearted fun with the people that you love, with your chosen family. When you're hanging out with your best friends, you are in a 3 of Cups moment. It's something that you'll recognize. Maybe when you meet that person who's going to become one of your close friends, you feel that energy of 3 of Cups that you've come to recognize through the cards. 10 of Wands. This is the card of don't be a hero, of burnout, of I get by with a little help from my friends, of asking for help, of not doing everything by yourself. It's this idea that if we do too much, we do literally burn out. It's 10 wands, 10 fires. That's the most that you can have. So with the 10 of Wands, it's a reminder that, like, hey, you don't have to be an island. You don't have to do it alone. Again, sometimes life gets intense. Sometimes you have too much on your plate. Sometimes you do need that reminder to delegate or ask for help or take a mental health break, just a couple of examples for you there. So yeah, the more you play tarot, the witchier you become, the more intuitive you are, the more life becomes this book that you read, that you understand, that you get to choose how you interact with it, you know? Energy becomes just kind of like more of a tangible thing rather than something that feels esoteric or mystical or woo-woo. You start to realize that it's just life, you know? No big deal. That's Born Witchy. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hitting subscribe. If you like this content, I'm going to be back here regularly talking about tarot, talking about intuition through a modern lens so that we can really ground these practices into our modern lives in a way that is valuable and helpful and helps us create a more intuitive and connected humanity. Thank you so much, witches. See you next time.